What's up? Welcome into another edition of Chat It Up Sports. I'm your host, Greg Leonard, alongside Mr. Chase Green. Over to, what is that, my left, my right? I don't know what, it's all backwards here on the cameras and when we're virtual and whatnot. Chase Green is here with us as well. Below him is Joseph Guthrie. And to his right is Mr. Scott Spinelli, back with us again, college basketball analyst and coach, and all things college basketball. Talk more madness of March. Before we do that, please feel free to hit us up on social media. Follow us, subscribe, like all the good things at Chatt It Up Sports and wherever you get your podcasts as well at Chatt It Up Sports. Also on YouTube. So, Scott, it's great to have you back, my friend. We're going to talk a little bit more basketball. We are on the precipice of the Final Four. Obviously, the championship soon after that. So we've got a lot of good things to get into. First and foremost, right off the bat, just wanted to get your general thoughts since we talked to you last about how the tournament's been through your eyes, the eyes of a basketball, the high-level Division I basketball coach and an analyst.
Well, first of all, I think you said it earlier when we were just kind of, chatting here, and that is, the committee got it right? You got the four top seeds that they picked, and what's happened is, as you guys are seeing this, and we talked about this, there's probably 25 teams and, that were capable of maybe getting to this point. And I said that only because 25 teams or so that were in this tournament that have a significant amount of NIL resources behind them. Obviously, there's some teams that, maybe had the talent, but didn't get to where these other four teams are. And I think what's happening is you're going to start seeing this more and more is the mid-major teams. The tournament might become a little bit, I'm not sure as eventful it's been over the previous, several years, only because a lot of these mid-major guys who are doing well are going to leave to go to high major programs, even if they're not playing, to sit the bench and get money. And I think this NIL side of it is here to stay. And right now we're playing, you see four teams that are, very well put together. You want to, you hate to use the word the best team money can buy, but there's a lot of resources in all four of these teams that have been put in to put the teams together. But again, I think the NIL side of this has a huge part of where the NCAA tournament is now and where it's going in the future.
So do you think it sort of has diminished the NCAA tournament as it was, or what it once was? Or do you still find it as entertaining as always, even with the blue bloods or the number one seeds making it through?
I think that's all in the eye of the beholder. I think you could look at it both ways. First of all, the quality of basketball with these experienced older players make the games a lot more intense. They're better. They're better to view. There's really good players. There's NBA caliber players on a lot of these teams now. So from the standpoint of watching really physically developed, older, more mentally mature players, that's what we're seeing now in the NCAA tournament. If you're one of those fans who likes to watch the Davy and Goliath type thing where the upsets happen against a smaller school comes in and upsets a high major program and changes the vision or the mid-major program in terms of what people look at it as, and I think the NCAA tournament has done that for many mid-majors along the way, many years. I'm not so sure you're going to see that as much, not only now, but moving forward. This NIL stuff right now is going to really take away, I think, from the mid-majors upsetting these high major programs in the NCAA tournament.
Even with the payouts coming, I kind of wonder. I know the Big East will probably profit from this the most in basketball, because whenever we're talking about the payouts directly coming from the school through the TV money and all the good stuff, is football is going to be king down here. And sure, there's still going to be collectives and things of that nature that still get these guys paid. But I really do feel like the Villanovas, who, have their own controversy this last week with the coaching hire, it's going to be fun to see if those schools, because they're not football schools, wind up paying their basketball programs more. So there might be some differentiation. Like, we might still see a lot of dominance in the SEC because there's just a lot of money down here anyways. But if you're going up in the Big East, it just might be 2 or 3 different conferences running the joint, but you still might have 16, 20 teams that could still vie for a championship because they're able to pay more money. And if you transfer, I'm going to be very interested to see like how the direct money works. So do you think that might be a cause for the mid majors may not be able to upset, but I still think there still might be 20 teams that could vie for a championship every year.
Well, that's an interesting point. I kind of see it respectfully a little bit different, only because a couple of years ago, the Big East actually was talking about pooling the money in the league and having each team give a certain amount of money, put it in a pool, and then everybody was going to be on a level playing field. That was kind of the talk early.
Oh, wow.
That's gone out the window. When you look at the Big East right now, there are some teams that are way more well-funded than others. I mean, start with St. John's. I mean, they've got a lot of resources right now. And then you look at some of the other programs, a Seton Hall, for example, that, doesn't right now, at least, in terms of comparative speaking in the Big East, I'm not sure they're at the level of a St. John's in terms of what kind of resources they have. But again, these football programs, I mean, they're very well funded. I get it. But a lot of these football schools now are also, from the basketball standpoint, raising the revenue and, the boosters. It's a credit to the boosters, the administrations, the fans. There's a big commitment too, not just, again, with basketball schools in the Big East. I mean, it's national now. And to your point about the mid majors, there's going to be obviously our pulse is on recruiting too at this time of year. And there's a mid-major school the other day that just offered a kid $100,000. That was one of the low major Division I programs. And I was kind of taken back from it. So, again, you might have your schools that do it, but for the most part, guys, this NIL thing, there's some teams that are extremely well funded, in all over the country, and not just Big East football programs too.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of money. I heard that's the reason that blanking on his name, the guy that just left Maryland.
Kevin Willard.
Yeah, Kevin Willard went to Villanova. It's gonna be, they're very well funded right now. It sounds like they're gonna really push for that. And what happened after Jay Wright made them step up, and I think they're doing a pretty good job in the old booster program. So they're, like you mentioned, there's still gonna be very, very, very well funded teams comparatively, but with the TV money and the direct payouts, I'm gonna be interested to see. I'm gonna be interested to see if they can compete, because, man, it's these mid majors, I don't know. I mean, like, as somebody that works in the universities, like, these small schools are having a hard time, and this is making it much harder. I just don't know how they're gonna do it. I don't know.
That's a good point. It's a good point. You almost think to yourself, someday is there going to be a P4 or Power 4, Power 5 NCAA tournament in men's basketball, and is there going to be like I don't know if you want to say FBS, Division I basketball tournament? I don't know. I mean, just kind of throwing that out there right now, because it is not a level playing field anymore.
No, it's certainly not a level playing field anymore with how everything is kind of shook out. Like you talked about the NIL and how the tournament's going, and there's just not been very many upsets, and none of these sort of underdog type teams have gone very far in this tournament. When you look back on the totality of the tournament, even if they're eliminated at this point, obviously we only have 4 1 seeds, but who was your biggest surprise to make it as far as they did? And on the flip side of that, who was your biggest disappointment as the tournament unfolded?
Well, I think, when we first talked we started the tournament, I go back to, there's 25 or so teams that, again, have the funding and the NIL resources to compete, with these 1 seeds. And I honestly was kind of surprised that all the 1 seeds were able to survive. I mean, and it wasn't easy. I mean, that Gonzaga Houston game, I thought Gonzaga was very underseeded. I mean, as an 8 seed, I believe they were 8 or 9, whatever they were. That was a really good game. And Gonzaga, I thought this year was way underrated all year. And that game could have gone any which way. I think late in the game, if you watched it, Gonzaga went to that 1-3-1 extended zone in the half court and really kind of gave Houston some problems with it. But, I was kind of surprised these 1 seeds all stuck. I really thought that, some of these teams that, you look at a team that was so talented, a team like Illinois, I mean, their NIL resources are through the charts, and they probably have 3 guys minimum, maybe, that were NBA caliber guys on that team. And, so they were well funded. They were very talented. And I thought that, when you look at a team like, you could look at a team like Auburn, right now, that the average age of their starting five is 23 and a half years old. I mean, that's a pretty old group of guys there. Whereas Duke's 19 and a half, Florida's 19 and a half. I think Houston's, right around that 20 years of age or so. But, again, there's all different types of teams that are left in the tournament. But, that was my biggest surprise, that all 4 1 seeds were able to get through, just because I thought with the NIL resources and a lot of these other teams were capable, that they were all able to survive.
Let's talk a little bit about the Tennessee Volunteers and their run to the Elite Eight, back-to-back Elite Eights, and still, unfortunately, that coveted Final Four national championship not coming for the Volunteers this year. So talk to me a little bit about their run and, obviously getting the big win against Kentucky, an SEC rival, and then running into what ended up being a buzzsaw. It looked like Tennessee was looking in a mirror, but looking at a better version of themselves in the Houston Cougars. And Kelvin Sampson did a fantastic job. Their team had boatloads of scoring. They shot the ball well. The defense was suffocating. Talk to me a little bit about what you saw from this Vols team through their run, that game specifically, and where Tennessee can go from here and what they need to kind of get over that hump in your estimation.
Yeah, I really think Tennessee had an incredible year. I mean, Coach Barnes, we've competed against him over the years when we were at Texas A&M, and he's just a terrific coach. And they had an unbelievable year. I thought their team, played hard night in and night out. They had an incredible identity defensively. They were simple offensively, but yet efficient at all 5 spots. And they were a difficult team, to match up with in a lot of ways. But when you're playing against a team like Houston with that type of culture, and their perimeter defense, I mean, that's the thing right now. Any basketball coach will tell you, whether they're coaching at the junior high, high school, college, even the NBA for that matter, great defense starts with pressure on the basketball. And Houston, although they don't have great positional size, at least the great positional size that Duke has, they're incredibly defensive minded, especially on the basketball. And that's where it all starts, right? That's the head of the snake. And I think, again, in that game, Houston, you watch this team, Duke, as good as they are. And I think Duke, and if it was a 10-game series, I think they'd beat Houston maybe 8 out of the 10, maybe 9. But in a 1-game setting, I think Duke is in for it in this game. I just think that they have yet to see the type of physicality they're about to see defensively. And we all know this, guys. I mean, playing in men's leagues, after you graduate, you play against those guys that might be a little undersized, and they're up underneath you, they're in you, and you're like, what the heck? And I think that's going to be the biggest test for Duke, is can they be able to go against this kind of physicality in a game like this. But again, getting back to Tennessee, I mean, what was Lanier? I think he was 4 of 18 from the field, maybe. And
Yeah.
Ziegler was 1 of 9, if I'm not correct. But think about that now. That's their 2, really, really good guards. And Houston just suffocated them defensively. And I think that's what Houston does to teams in a 1-game setting. Against Duke, as good as Duke is, and I think they're the best team on paper right now. Again, really, really good basketball team. Great. They're complete on both ends. Tremendous coaching. I do think this game might be a surprise, just because I think Houston, their physicality is something that if you haven't seen before, it can catch you off guard.
Yeah, and looking at that game too, which was crazy to me, is they only turned over Tennessee 9 times. It was just suffocating defense. They just took Tennessee out of every rhythm. And despite people knowing exactly where Chaz is going to come off every down screen and every little hook screen they run that gets Gainey open on the elbow, or Chaz, or even Ziegler at times, like they did it so well all throughout the year, and it felt like Tennessee just kept getting their open shots. But this Houston team felt like 3 steps ahead, and just, even if you caught it, it was going to be the toughest shot you had. That's the first time I've seen anybody take away Ziegler in penetration. Like, it's unbelievable. That was the first time that guy just couldn't get around somebody. That's the fastest first step I've ever seen for Z. And I'm like, oh man, this Houston team right out of the gate with the tight Tennessee team, you take away Z's drive, I'm like, what are we getting ourselves into? And with that, I mean, I'll kind of go ahead and talk over the Houston and Duke game. I feel like they're the only team that can kind of cover Duke. I don't know if they can score with them, but don't you feel like they're the only team that could match up as a whole defense, not individually, because Cooper's a stud, but as a whole defense, this is the best team left in the tournament.
Yeah, I just think that, I mean, both teams, first of all, Duke is very underrated defensively.
Oh, yeah, what they did to Bama. Good
You know,
gosh.
I mean, incredible, defensive pressure. And the one thing, again, going back to Duke and why this matchup is that both of these games to me are so evenly matched in a lot of ways. Again, Duke's advantage is their positional size. Look, when you watched Houston against Purdue, they were blitzing and doubling every ball screen that Braden Smith came off, and it made it hard for him. But he had to make plays off the double team. That's not going to happen in this game. There's no way you can double a guy like Cooper Flagg or any of those guys. They've too many other players. Plus, their size, they can see over a lot of those double teams and make the right play. But again, I think for Duke in this game, if they're going to get their offense really going, I think they're going to have to get stops in the half court and really get out and transition and run. I think if Houston puts them in the half court, and I believe it's first one to 65. I could be way off, but I do think this game might be one of those games that is a slugfest. I mean, a real fit, and both teams, again, guys, I think are really complete. I mean, there's the one thing about Duke that impresses, I think, for me, anyways, that I watch, as good as they are talent-wise and physically, and as well drilled and well coached as they are, they're mentally strong and tough. I was kind of, listening to something the other day, and they were talking about how a lot of the stuff that Duke did in the summer was a lot of mental training, mindfulness, meditation, yoga, things that they could kind of, lay their hat on. Because again, guys, this college basketball season, especially with the stakes being as high now with NIL money, and obviously we all know the social media side of this can get mean at times for kids. I think having a very even keel temperament, is something that's critical to the success of your team and your players. And I think Duke has that. But this is going to be a very physical game. And I just think, again, 9 out of 10 times I'm taking Duke on this one night, guys, just that first game. I do think it's going to be a little bit of a shock to Duke in terms of the Houston physicality and their perimeter pressure defense.
Well, on the other side of things, Coach, we have an SEC matchup, Florida versus Auburn. We saw that matchup earlier on in the season, and Florida got the better of them 90-81 in that win. 4 out of the 5 starters for Florida had double figures. And then on the Auburn side, Broom went off, Kelly went off, Pettiford was coming off the bench, and he's a kid that's really popped here in the tournament. Talk to me a little bit about what you see from this matchup on the Florida side, on the Auburn side, because that one should be a fun one as well, obviously, when you've got 2 really good SEC schools going at it.
Yeah, I mean, again, 2 really evenly matched teams complete. One of the things that you tell your team when you get to the NCAA tournament, or when you're a high school coach and you get to the playoffs and the districts and the states, when you're in the NBA, you see these regular season games, and then you see how intense it gets in the NBA playoffs. It is a new season, right, when you get to the NCAA tournament. So looking back at some of those matchups, yeah, maybe you can try to, get something, schematically in terms of exploiting a matchup that maybe you noticed in that game by watching it. Maybe you got an advantage at a certain position. But for the most part, this is a new season. This is a whole new game. That really doesn't mean much, at least in my mind. But in terms of this game, you have 2 teams that are very complete. And again, you have – and the one thing, we were talking about this earlier, 3 of the top 4, all these 4 teams, 3 of the players individually on each team, like Broom, is Clayton, and another young man from, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank here, from Houston. There's 3 guys that are all from Florida that are significant players. I'm talking about raised in Florida. And I thought that was an interesting, thing to look at in this game. But Florida is really good. They're complete. I just think Auburn, if Broom's healthy, and I haven't seen a big guy as dominant at every aspect of the game. I mean, he can step out and make shots, the 3. He goes inside. He's very efficient. The one thing that he's very underrated, he's an unbelievable passer. Guys, he's got over 100 assists. I mean, down there. in the post, and then he blocks shots at that. So again, is he healthy? I think he's the X factor, and I think because of him, and I think Auburn, I'm giving Auburn a slight advantage in this game, as good as Florida is, and I do think this is going to be an incredibly competitive game. I think the experience factor with Auburn having that older starting lineup, again, averaging 23 and a half years old, I think could, bode well for them. They are going to have to make free throws late. Florida's going to, Clayton led the country in free throw percentage at one point during his career. But again, two evenly matched teams. But again, I'm going with Auburn only because I think if Broom's healthy, if he's healthy, I just think he's the X factor. He's that good a player.
Yeah.
Chase, I want to ask just one more follow-up if I could before you jump in. But I just was curious because we talked about both of these matchups. If you had money to go to one of these games and buy a ticket to one of these games, which matchup are you most excited to go and watch, and which matchup are you spending your hard-earned coin on?
Oh man, I tell you, that's a real hard question for me. I think both of these games bring so much intrigue because they're so evenly matched, and you could flip the script and have one team that wins, this first semifinal game and then plays a team in the championship that they might have an advantage of, in terms of matchups. I could see that happening if Houston wins, in the other side of this. But I think both games, I think the quality of play, the physicality, and no one's talking about this, guys. The NIL side of this is keeping these kids around, a lot of these really good players, because they're able to, to make money. They're generating revenue. And the one thing that's happening now, if you think back, it's really going to help, I believe, the NBA game, which I think the NBA game, when you have all these young players coming in, it just becomes, hey, are they ready yet? They got a lot of potential. No one talks about that. And I do think over time, if this and the NIL stuff here is going to make the NBA game that much better, because you guys remember back when, at least when I was younger, the NBA, you had to come out of college until you couldn't come out till you were a junior. And so you had guys like Larry Bird, Magic Johnson. They were grown men coming to the NBA. And I think now, we might see more of that here with the NIL side of this. And those guys that are getting ready to go to the NBA might spend a little bit longer time in college because they are getting paid, and they can get there and they'll be NBA ready. But I think both teams, to answer your question, I'd flip a coin. This is going to be a very intriguing, Final Four.
Oh, definitely. What's funny too is I was listening to a podcast the other day with Tyler Hansborough, and he said something similar. He was like, Sean May would have stayed another year at Carolina, but back then you needed to get a bag. So he went on to the NBA. Didn't really work out, and that's okay. But it's just funny to hear like legends like Sean May and Felton probably would have stayed one more year. And your next year you could have wound up winning another championship or something along those lines if you're a Carolina or somebody. So it's funny you mentioned that, because that was literally what they were talking about the other day. It's like those guys would have stayed, and and Broom's a perfect example. Like, might have got something out of last year, but now he's probably made himself even more money because he stayed this year, made a lot of money, and he's going to go to the NBA next year and be a higher draft pick. So that's a good point, because we're going to keep legends around for at least one more year, or they go to another school. Hopefully not.
Maybe at another school, right?
Yeah, that's the most frustrating part for me. But I think they'll eventually figure that out. But speaking of matchups, I wanted to ask. So I got two questions kind of pertaining to coaching aspect. If you are Todd Golden versus Bruce Pearl, obviously Golden worked on Pearl's staff the first year. These matchups, do you take the first one into account with what G talked about earlier, the loss that Auburn took? Do you take that game, you throw it out, do you keep it around? And how do you kind of double up with knowing each other so well? And do you make tweaks, or you just kind of try to say, hey, we're going to be us and we might tinker with a few things, but we ain't changing anything just because he knows kind of what we're going to do, because we already know what he's going to do as well?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think as a coach, you come into, the NCAA tournament, a playoff game, a conference tournament, and the game of basketball is about matchups. And I think the biggest thing that, right now, I'm sure all the coaches are doing are trying to figure out what matchup advantage they may have or may not have. Something in terms of as simple as ball screen coverages, right?
Mhm.
Um, are you gonna, you're gonna be in drop coverage? Are you gonna be in, are you gonna ice things? Are you gonna switch ball screens? There's a lot of different things that probably go into the game planning right now that, from a coaching standpoint, we're pretty familiar with. That I'm not sure, a lot of the general audience would probably, really see. But I think that's what the coaches are doing and trying to figure out. Again, listen, one possession, right, guys, one possession could decide, a team, ability to move on and play for a national title. And so you're trying to get any little advantage that you can. And look, I mean, college basketball is 40 minutes long. There's two 20-minute halves, and every possession matters, right? And I think, like, as a coach, we always, I would tell our guys, look, guys, winning will take care of itself. Your job is to try to go out there and win each possession, win every possession, whether that's offense, defense, and really take that mindset. Because I don't think you go into this game as a coach saying, we got to win. We got to win in advance. We want to go home. No, you take the approach that we're going to win each possession, play one possession at a time, give it your best, and the result will eventually take care of itself.
Yeah, I definitely feel like these coaches have to, because I mean, there's a lot of veteran guys, and I think Houston's made it. And there's guys from different area. I know there's two guys from the FAU teams that are in this left of the tournament, and it's just kind of crazy that there's a lot of experience. Also with that, Auburn has played all three of these teams, funny enough, throughout the year. And, two of them were back in like November, December. When you're going into a tournament game, or, I mean, I guess this could have been like even like your, conference tournament games, your early games in the years, like are early on in your schedule, like, do you kind of look at those like we're a pretty different team? Or do you kind of scout that old game and be like, here's things we can take away? Or is it mostly just we're a totally different team? They're probably a totally different team. Let's look what they've done recently instead of what we did 5 months ago.
Well, I think you can learn so much by watching film, and any advantage, again, that you can get by watching a previous game, whether it was you versus the opponent or somebody else that plays similarly, or maybe even a team that beat that team. What did they do that made it for them to, to have an advantage to win that game? So you're going through film. Film is critical. Again, all levels of basketball. You could talk about any professional, sport, football, hockey. I mean, film matters, and you really have to kind of be passionate about watching film. You learn so much. I mean, over the years as a coach, you learn so much of not only what to do, but what not to do in certain situations. But I don't think you go into it and as a coach and you say, hey, your team, the old adage of, hey, great players are made in the off season, great teams are made in season. And by that, as you guys know this from playing, I'm sure a lot of sports along, the way for you guys, and you're going to go through some highs and lows, some ups and downs. You're going to face adversity, and how that team rallies around one another, right? Your teammates, making sure that you're supporting one another. And I think that's why some teams, become and they get more connected as the year goes. And so those early games are only lessons, right? That you want to continue to get better. We want to correct some of those things. But again, I think a lot of this, this stuff that goes on in any sport for that matter, as the year goes, you want your team to be more connected, come together, and be the best version of each player, and obviously the team being the best version of the team.
All right, coach, I got two more for you before I'm all set in terms of question asking. But first and foremost, when just kind of looking at these matchups, I know Chase had talked to you about Houston and Duke and things like that. Now, obviously, Cooper Flag is the big name. Con Knimpel has been awesome in this tournament as well. You have a lot of experience at a high level coaching Division I college basketball. You've coached a lot of really impressive players that are, went on to play at the NBA at a very high level. If you are Coach Sampson and having to devise some way to stop this Duke team with Knimpel, obviously with Cooper Flag, what would be your strategy to implement to kind of limit what Cooper Flag can do, and then not allowing Proctor or Knipple to really kill you on the secondary side of things from a scoring standpoint?
Well, I think it's just to do what Houston's done to pretty much every team this year. I think their perimeter defense, their perimeter pressure, again, great defense starts with pressure on the basketball. And I think Houston has to take that mindset, right? They're going to get out. They've got to pressure the basketball. Another thing that, you don't really talk about is how the game's going to be officiated. Are they going to allow some of this physicality to go on in that game? And I think that's something to kind of look out for in terms of a subplot. But, again, I think Houston's biggest, for me anyways, I think they're going to continue to be who they are. And I think Coach Sampson is one of the all-time greatest coaches ever to coach this game. And I think the culture that he creates, the competitive spirit, the desire to win each possession, the physicality of which these guys play for. I'll say this to you guys. I wouldn't probably tell a lot of people this. There's an NBA pro that comes off the bench for that team that I love. And he doesn't, do a lot, but he's a kid that I believe is going to play a long time in the NBA, just my opinion. And so you have that kind of depth and physicality. And I think Duke's, biggest thing that they're going to have to do, and I think if Houston takes this away, one is they got to make sure Duke has to try to get out in transition. And Duke, if they get out in transition and can get easy baskets, I think that's going to help their case. If Houston can really, make sure they get back defensively, match up, and put them in the half court, then I think you're talking about a slugfest game. Another thing that, to kind of watch out for here is Houston is the best three-point shooting percentage team still left in the Final Four. We weren't able to say that over the years, against the Houston team. Usually they've been just so good defensively. The reason why they don't maybe score as many points is because they take teams so late in the shot clock defensively that there's limited possession. So that stat's a little bit deceptive, right? I think it's more about, points per shot and efficiency with Houston. And I think that's what they're about. And that's what their identity is. On the other side, Houston's going to have to face a team that's got tremendous positional size. I mean, they're big, they're long. And they're very good defensively too. And I think that's something that Houston's going to have to combat. Are they going to be used to the size of what Duke has at each position? So those are some things to kind of watch as the game unfolds. But again, I think for Houston anyways, they just got to continue to be who they are, really defend the basketball, help one another out. They got to finish possessions with rebounds, and they got to limit easy baskets from Duke. That's going to be the key. If Duke doesn't get a lot of easy baskets, oh, guys, this game could be a real, nail biter down to the end.
Can you tell us the player on Duke that you really like off the bench?
No, for Houston.
Houston. Who's the player?
I don't really want to say it because you know what happens in this, guys? We start talking about pro players, and the next thing you know, somebody calls and, why'd you say that kid is a pro? I just stay away from it. But for me personally, as you watch these games, and you've been kind of around it a long time, you see guys, and for over the years, for all these coaches, including myself, you put a lot of food on the table on evaluating players, right? I mean, that's what you have to do. You have to be able to recruit and get the best player and then really develop them. But I think, again, we're seeing a lot of really good basketball players. There's a lot of NBA talent on that floor, in both games. But there's one guy, again, for me, that's very unheralded, and I'm watching him, and I say to myself, wow, here's a guy that would be a great lesson for younger kids to watch because he's not out there demanding the basketball. He just goes out there and impacts winning and does whatever Coach Sampson tells him to do. And I think always in the game of basketball or any sport, there's room for players that are just going to be a star in their role, and they're going to try to impact winning. And Houston has, again, just like all these teams, they have guys with defined roles, but there's one player in particular to me, I think, exemplifies that perfectly.
You talk about Duke's positional size. Malawak made an unbelievable difference against Alabama. Like, I guess I didn't realize how much penetration Alabama needed to kind of run their offense and do all the things they do and getting Sears in space. And that guy just eliminates all these things. How do you go back to your coaching days? How do you get a guy like that that's so athletic and makes up ground? I mean, he's not Giannis Antetokounmpo, but it feels like it sometimes. He just erases any mistake your guys make on him on ball. He's there to pick up the slack. How do you get a guy like that out of the paint and away from just eliminating anything you bring inside?
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to get him away from the basket. I think, again, for Houston, a part of that, question earlier about what they have to do defensively to stop Duke is eliminate, easy baskets, get back in transition, if it finish possessions with rebounds. But at the same time, offensively, they've got to get him away from the basket. I think that, his guy, whoever he's guarding, is going to have to be a guy that's setting a lot of either screens off the ball screens, re-screens, fade screens to try to get him up at the point of ball screen coverage is critical to me in this game. Again, trying to get him where if there's any type of screen, whether, again, you want to try to get him at that point so he can be away from the basket. And, again, to his credit, to obviously, what Duke does defensively, they really put him in a position where he kind of just roams the paint there. And to your point, it's hard to see the rim. I mean, it's not even so much of the block shots. I think one of the, kind of a deceptive stat is how many shots has he changed or has he caused the opposition to think about? And I think that's one of the biggest advantages a guy like he, brings to a team like this. But again, you've got to try to figure out ways to get him to come out at, at any of the screens you're setting to try to get away from the basket.
Chase, do you have any other Final Four questions for Coach? I've got some non-Final Four questions for Coach, but if you have any
go ahead. Now I'm good on the Final Four. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So just kind of, you obviously have coached a long time in Division I, as we've alluded to, and you've coached a lot of really good players. As you kind of look at the coaching landscape of Division I men's college basketball coaches and the new faces and new places that have already happened since the tournament has started, since we last talked to you, talk to me about the one or two that most intrigue you in terms of guys going from one program to another.
Well, I think anytime, there's so many factors that go into this, when you're, obviously as a coach, some of these guys have had so many chances and choices to choose where they're going. And, I think, again, from a surprise standpoint, it's hard to know what really is going on. I think passing judgment on why a coach is wanting to get out of a place, it could be something as, hey, him and the president don't get along. There's so many factors that you really can't, you don't know why somebody's leaving. And again, I think for any of the coaches that have moved on, and gone to a different place, it could be a variety of reasons. But look, Buzz coming back to the East Coast. I mean, don't forget now he's a Texas guy, but he was at VaTech and he had great success there. And so seeing him in obviously College Park. And so he went from College Station to College Park, right? Maryland. So that's kind of an interesting one, but he's going to do great things there. He's a tremendous coach, great motivator. They play defensively. They're very physical. So I do think that some of this, might be a little bit like, hey, this coach went there because he maybe had something else that was going on that maybe none of us knew about. Maybe it's a contract issue. Maybe it's an NIL resource issue. Some guys are looking for more resources. So I wouldn't there's really no way to tell, but for me, that was probably one that kind of caught me a little bit off guard.
Yeah. On that, I was listening to what Buzz was talking about. I don't know if you heard this quote about the 7-year thing. Do you see this?
No, I didn't see that.
Okay. So I was listening. It was an assistant coach of his just recently. They're like, I know Buzz. And they said his mindset is, and he stays at these places for 7 years and he kind of rolls on. I'm like, wow. Okay. So then he goes back throughout his career and it just kind of rolls on. He said, listen, either at the 7-year mark, you go in and he's done the whole, I go there and I build things, and he's really done it. VaTech, A&M got him to really great spots. But he said after that time, these fan bases start to either find you a disappointment when you've brought the team their first Elite Eight or their first Sweet 16. And I was like, wow, that's very intriguing, because I kind of think back at it from a Tennessee perspective. It's like, man, we were hot garbage for a long time, but now we're questioning Rick Barnes' for getting us to back-to-back Elite Eights, which we have had, what, 3 in the last 25 years, 30 years. So it's like, wow, that's a tough one for Buzz. So, but for him to get back to Maryland and he's got a chance to build that program back up, I don't know. Did you ever see that from like, because you were at places for a while, did you kind of see the whole like, hey, it probably should be time to move on because these places, they're already either patting us on the back too much or not enough because we've done too much to do good, because you've done a lot of good in certain spots.
Well, ironically enough, we actually were at Texas A&M and I was on staff there as an assistant coach, and we went to Maryland. So we experienced that same transition. We left Texas A&M. We had the best 4-year win total, and I don't think anyone's ever going to top it. We had either 97 or 98 wins in 4 years there, 4 straight NCAA tournaments. We were really good.
I'll give you this. You had 102. Look that up.
Was it 102? Okay, whatever.
Oh, boy. Hey, I'm going to give you those triple digits, big dog. You're going to give me those triple digits.
I appreciate it. So, we had a great run there. And I think some of this is just, again, I don't know. Every coach probably has their own rationale and reasons behind it. As assistants, you kind of go with the flow. And, sadly, in some of this, what happens is you're there helping, a head coach win, and the head coach moves on. And sometimes he doesn't take you with him. And the reason behind that is, even though you've helped him win, it's maybe not the right fit, right? Your recruiting base might not be that area, or you might be better off in, a certain, place that you're not as advantageous. So it is kind of a ruthless profession from that standpoint. But what I'm starting to see, guys, is in this whole coaching realm, the recruiting side of this really is, hey, what's your PIN number in your ATM? Because that's really sadly, I say that sadly. No, I shouldn't say sadly, but that's the reality. That's where we're at today. It's not a sad thing. It's just, hey, if you have resources, you're going to be able to, go out and recruit, certain type of players. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have the winning formula, but it certainly means you're going to have some talent there. And again, it's turning into. I coached years ago in the minor leagues. I was 1 year in the first year of the IBL, the International Basketball League, and we had and I wish they would do this for college. They probably will never do this, but we had a salary cap for all the teams in the IBL, 700. It was like 735,000. We had 10 guys. And what happens is in a minor league setting is you basically have players, revolving door coming in and coming out. And so if you're an experienced coach and you understand how to blend and mold your team together in a year, I think what we very important is getting them there as soon as you can in the summer and trying to really establish, some chemistry and camaraderie. But it's turning into a minor league setting in a lot of ways for a lot of these coaches and a lot of these universities, in that these are 1 year, type deals. And from there, you got to figure out what's next. So every year you got to be locked into recruiting, whether it's your own guys or, the portal, every year.
Chase, anything else?
Man, that's it. Coach, I will say this, 102 wins in 4 years is pretty dang good.
We got to get this man back on the sideline somewhere.
Yeah, he's got the itch. He's staying in shape.
Yeah, he's working out late at night.
Which, guys, listen, we're blessed. I've got, a beautiful family, and, again, I've been in this, such a long time. And like I said, you have to have a lot of faith that things are going to work out, for you as God wants it to do. Right. And so, but, like I said, I love, your show. I love being on here with you guys, and it's a fun time of year for everybody.
It is. Oh, last thing, Coach, you said you had a daughter. Any advice for a girl dad?
Listen, I'm telling you, when Gianna, which in Italian, is you can interpret that as a gift from God. That's what it means in Italian. So the name Gianna. And so she was our firstborn child. And, at first, oh my God, I'm having a daughter. And, you say to yourself, wow, I don't know, but she is truly special. I mean, and, the impact that you have on her as a dad is going to matter significantly. And we're so proud of her. She graduated from Boston College. She's doing right now critical care work at Beth Israel up in Boston. And she's actually going to be going back to school for CRNA So she has Lynn, my wife's brain, not mine.
That's what my wife is too. Funny enough.
So yeah, no, it's a blessing, and I got my 2 boys, which they're a lot of fun too. But yeah, there's something about a daughter that really is special. Enjoy.
We'll do. That's funny. My wife's a CRNA, so
Is she really?
yeah, she's walking in an awesome field. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's a blessing for that. I will say, time wise, and it's hard work, and it's very stressful at times, but the world's been pretty difficult on nurses for a long time, but now they kind of get to choose. So she's gonna be doing all right.
Well, I tell you what, I gotta get Gianna, if it's okay, to pick her brain someday. She's just
Anytime, coach.
Yeah, that would be awesome. But thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Great stuff as always. Scott Spinelli again has been our guest. He is a college basketball coach and an analyst. He's been with Boston College, Maryland, Texas A&M, and he has evaluated and developed many NBA players as well. We love having him on the show, and we love chopping it up about college basketball with you, Coach. Best of luck on all your endeavors, and good luck to Gianna, of course, and make
Thanks,
sure you
man.
stay blessed, you and your family. It's always good to get a chance to talk to you.
Appreciate it, guys. Always a pleasure, man. Love being on with you guys. Okay, stay healthy.
Yeah, we will do our best. Appreciate it, Coach. There you go. Scott Spinelli here on Chatt It Up Sports. Love having an opportunity to chat it up with him. All right, boys. I want to pose the same question that I posed to him to you guys. Just to, I know there's a couple of other things that we want to meander into here on the rest of the show, but what is if you got the opportunity to go to one of these 2 Final Four games, Chase? Which game are you most intrigued by? Which one are you going to?
I think it's Florida Auburn. And I know Coach didn't dive into it too hard, but it's really cool to see the guy that was on Bruce Pearl's, he was an assistant, is now coaching against this guy. And I like that because Brucey seems pretty competitive about it. These guys are good at giving the right answers, but I was listening to a whole pod with Bruce today, and I was like, that boy wants to beat Todd. He's pretty pissed that I think he got him the first time. And not only that, put up 90, dude.
Yeah.
You got cooked. And it's going to be awesome. I think Pettifer is, like you said, he's popping right now. But he's also going against the most clutch guy left in the tournament. So, dude, there's just so much. They match up really good against Auburn. And I don't know. I think I'd rather see the points. I think it's going to be a defensive battle on the other side, which is going to be fun in its own right. But this could be, as Miggy says, cinema with Auburn, Florida.
No doubt about it. What about you, Jay? Obviously, you're quiet because you're not a huge college basketball guy. But if you had the opportunity to go to one of these 2 games, which would you go to?
I'm just learning. I'm
still year 1, baby, rookie year.
Toes in the water, made the tournament. Yeah, toe in the water. I probably Auburn, Florida as well for me, and for a lot of the same reasons. As 2 teams that have met once this season already and played. Florida got the best of them. Auburn, when they saw the bracket, they probably didn't think too much of it because I doubt Bruce Pearl let them. But they probably saw, hey, if we do this right, we could get our shot at Florida again. We could get back, and that could put us in the championship. So that mixed with the coaching, Bruce Pearl being part of Bruce Pearl's staff. Gosh, that was hard to say. And then it's just an SEC rivalry, man. It's an SEC. Fan bases are crazy. They're going to talk about it for the next until football season. Because I don't know if Florida and Auburn play in football season, but if they don't, then they'll talk about it until next basketball season. Hey, we knocked you out of the tournament. We're the one that kept you from going to the championship game. And I just think that's carries a little bit more weight than 2 really good teams, don't get me wrong, in Duke and Houston that, like Chase said, might be a better basketball game depending on what you're looking for. And if certainly NBA talent, maybe if you're looking at Duke specifically, but it's an SEC rivalry, man. It's an SEC matchup for a spot in the championship game. These fan bases are going to be absolutely wild. I'll take Auburn, Florida.
I was going to say, I should have known that you were going to go with an SEC rivalry. You're such an SEC guy.
Dude.
It means more.
Yeah, exactly. It just means more. Yeah. No, for me, honestly, and this is how I felt about it even before I posed the question to you guys. Honestly, I'd rather go see Duke and Houston. Now, obviously, I would be rooting hard for Duke to lose because much like Chase, I really do just dislike all things Duke. But you can recognize greatness when you get an opportunity to see it, and that is Cooper Flagg. And to get an opportunity to see potentially the best player in the nation right now as a freshman, that would be pretty special to me. I'm really curious, even going to be watching it obviously on TV, but just very curious the way that Kelvin Sampson goes about defending him and then the other weapons that Duke has and trying to limit them the way that they were able to limit Tennessee. And they really did a fantastic job, like you said, Chase, like limiting that penetration by Ziegler. And since he wasn't able to penetrate, there was really no space for anybody. And Chaz is up there just jacking, is whatever he could up there, and nothing was falling for him. And so it was very tough. So to me, even if it's going to be a defensive battle, and trust me, look, I love points, I love scoring, I'd much rather that. But for this specific chess game of a matchup between Houston and Duke, I'm really excited to see how that plays out. Is Houston's defense really that legit, or was Tennessee really just that bad in that specific matchup? I know Houston's really good, but they didn't shoot the ball well. It seemed like they had just an unordinarily really, really good day at the office for Houston, and we'll see if they're able to do that against a better offensive team in Duke.
Yeah, because it feels like even against Tennessee, they struggled at times, like offensively. And that's kind of a credit to Tennessee's defense at moments, but they're going to cause them problems. But that's the thing, is like the Malawak situation. I just did not realize he was going to cause that much. I really did feel like Alabama just wasn't, when you come off those kind of crazy games, it just never follows up well. So I just thought they would lose because of that. But dang, dude, these two teams defensively, I think coach is right. Because I was like, man, Duke's probably going to score more than 65, but I was like, maybe not. Because as you mentioned, dude, you take away, the old like Belichick approach, you take away your best option, and they can do that. Both these teams can do that because of size and like just honestly, just all around defensive tenacity. And I want to hate this Duke team, but this is the first Duke team I'm like, well, I don't want to tune in and watch, if Shower wins this one and he gives me I just need one partially smug answer to hate them again. But he's been so damn good. And I listen to all these pods and they're like, dude, yeah. Did you guys hear Pat Bev talk about Sean Shower?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you hear this, Joseph? So Pat Bev went on his pod and he was like, dude, there was in Chicago, there was this 6'4" white dude that would pull up to the roughest of places, the roughest of places, and be like, who wants some? And just cook these inner city guys. And they're like, he's like, that's John Shire, dude. And he was that guy. Like he was a stone cold killer at Duke. Him and Tyus Jones are probably the two like Duke guys where I'm like, dude, I did not want them taking a shot. Like Austin Rivers hit that one, but for the most part of the year, I was like, shoot that shot, dude. But Tyus Jones, John Shire, I was like, those guys had the FU attitude more so than anybody else. And he's brought it to it, and he has done a damn good job coaching. I was surprised, and people are like, he's got the K in him. He does. And I was like, dang gummit.
He looked like such a nerd on Coach K's staff. He's got the glasses. He was very like a shirt tucked in, suit, whatever. And now he's just like up there with a backwards hat. He just looks like a cooler guy.
Yeah, he commands the room. I thought him and Nolan Smith were look like betas back then too.
Yes. Yeah. When I heard that story, I was very surprised the way he just looked, just like looking at John Shire, like so unassuming. Like there's no way that this dude used to pull up to the roughest neighborhoods in inner city Chicago and just cook whomever it was. I don't remember if it was specifically this, but I feel like I remember hearing Pat Bev talk about it where he would literally like look up whatever guy was ranked, whatever, and he would go try to find out where he's playing and just, like you said, just go cook him.
Just go cook, dude. I do love that. That's the only thing I like about them. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I like Cooper Flagg.
I mean, he's so freaking good, dude.
He's so good.
I was, and this is just a little of my UConn bias. I just saw this the other day that Liam McNeely is foregoing any more years at UConn and is going to go to the draft. And I was really surprised about that because I did not think he was that good this year.
Yeah, some of these guys, I don't know. That wasn't weird situations with that kind of stuff. I guess you can go just try.
But
maybe.
it's like what Scott was talking about. Coach was talking about. It's like, why would you go? Like, there's money to be had in NIL money, and there's money certainly coming in the basketball program, coming off back-to-back national championships. Certainly, there's got to be money there to be made at UConn. Maybe he just didn't fit in with whatever the culture was or the way Coach Hurley coached, and he just decided that instead of trying to go to another program, maybe he's already graduated. I don't know.
Maybe.
Whatever. Yeah.
But yeah, that might be one of those things. Like, I could go to another program and make some money, but do I really want to move? I mean, I'm sure he could find somewhere. He's good enough to go find somewhere, but it's like, do I really want to go all the way to Florida State or wherever?
Yeah, and I was wrong. I couldn't remember if not he was a freshman, but he was a freshman last year, and so he's just going to go straight to the league.
Oh,
maybe he's. Go ahead, Chase. Sorry.
No, that's all I was going to say.
Maybe he's. Have you seen a couple of these players that have declared for the draft and entered the transfer portal?
Or is he definitely declaring?
Last I looked, he was declaring.
Okay.
I haven't seen anything about him.
I know what you mean. Just like it's more of an evaluation process now, and everybody's gotten better from it.
Well, it's just like I've seen a couple of players, and there was one from Georgia's roster that did it, that he entered the transfer portal and declared for the draft. So whichever field he gets a better offer in, kind of like Carson Beck did last year, where he declared for the draft, and then a few months later, it's like, hey, he's at Miami. Players can do that now. So you can declare for the draft, and if some school comes up and throws a bag at you, it's like, well, I'm actually gonna wind back on that, enter the portal, and go there. So I mean, maybe because I'm assuming from what we've seen, there hasn't been a precedent set. There's been a precedent set where once you declare for the draft, you're not like done.
Mm-mm.
You can't just decide. You can't decide not to change your mind and come back to a school if they offer you enough money. So maybe.
Yeah, St. John's leading scorer did the same thing. The declare but transfer.
Declare and transfer.
Yeah. Well, and
players. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, do y'all think players should be able to do that? Like, should you have to pick one or the other? Because it kind of muddies the water there a little bit.
Give them options.
Yeah,
I mean, options. I would say.
Okay.
Same.
I'm not too upset about that.
Especially if you're going to be able to give, if coaches are going to be doing what they've been doing the last 2 weeks, then yeah. Sorry.
And I mean, you've set that you've declared that you're leaving the program. So I mean, I guess that's
either way.
That's really all you need to declare.
Yeah.
Hey,
I will be.
Guys, I'm out.
I won't be in Queens anymore this year. Yeah.
See you.
I'm going south. Which that's what's crazy to me is like, dude, ball out in New York. That'd be sweet.
Yeah.
Last thing I wanted to touch on when it comes to college basketball, Chase, I was really curious to get your thoughts on this. The way the season ended for Tennessee, do you feel like this was Rick Barnes' last game as a coach, or do you think he's coming back?
It does feel like it would be a really good ending off point. I know the games was bad, but God, be back-to-back Elite Eights is awesome for Tennessee. Me and my boys are talking about it all throughout the week. It's like, who the heck are we going to get that matches that? I mean, what we've gone through, and that's why I was talking about the Buzz Williams thing. It's like, dude, that's such a good point of it really does feel like these fan bases all of a sudden turn and be like, well, Rick can't get to the big ones. Like, dude, we weren't getting to the dance.
No,
we weren't good in the NITs, bro. So like much less this. I mean, sure, we all miss Bruce, but that's the second one over Bruce now. So, I mean, I know the tenure's a little longer, but dude, what a great coaching run. And Ziegler's leaving. You gotta feel another roster. Now, I know he does like the transfer portal stuff. You and I have talked about it multiple times. He said it on press conference, like, hey, it's pretty nice. 9 weeks or 6 weeks of recruiting instead of 9 to 10 months. Like, it's just way better. So he goes out and he's pretty good at it, and their staff crushes, but I feel like you're replacing a lot of leadership now. Losing Z and Meshack is a big jump, and it's a great story thing. Like, you end with Z, and the program's not in a bad spot. There's a lot of money there. Like, you just kind of figure it out. But I don't know. Did it have the feel for you?
Yeah, I think he's coming back. I personally, for me, just kind of the way I'm looking at it and thinking about it, it feels like he's still got some more left in the tank. And I don't believe that he would leave Tennessee kind of high and dry at this point, because it seems like a lot of the major name coaches have already landed in different spots. And I almost believe he would do Tennessee better than just sort of like dragging this out. Just being like, I think he would have come out earlier and been like, hey, look, this is my last year. That way, Danny White has an opportunity to start doing interviews and get somebody in there. Maybe he's able to grab a Richard Pitino or somebody like that, maybe an up and coming sort of coach, because there's not a whole lot of guys that are established unless they decide to, maybe try to offer and sway somebody else or swoon somebody else over that's already, that already has a job, that maybe wants a bit of a promotion to be in an SEC program or something like that. That's the only way I can see it. But to me, I just feel like in my gut that he's going to continue to coach and he's coming back.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I just think it would be this is a good point if he wanted to stop.
Yeah, I agree. It wouldn't be a bad point.
Yeah, I don't know, but because I guess the thing about it is if you're gonna do it now, you stay, it almost feels like you might as well stay. Like you're just staying for 3 more years or something along those lines.
Unless he happens to win like a championship or something like that.
See ya.
Yeah, I'm going out on a high note.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I know they're already recruiting the transfer portal. Us, On3 does a great job of telling me everything about the transfer stuff. I think they're already getting 2 or 3 guys that are leaving their programs and whatnot. So we're getting guys already. Hopefully we have that big one. Hopefully we have our Chaz or Dalton again, because we sure need one of those.
Sure do. And you got to build up that team for sure. All right. Before we get up out of here, there's a couple of things Chattanooga wise that I wanted to kind of touch on with you guys. The first and foremost, can we just give a quick shout out to our city for a couple of different things? Yes. First and foremost, that Red Wolves versus CFC game on Wednesday. I mean, look, none of us were able to go. Our boy Miggy was going. He was out there. He took some incredible video for us that was up on our social media accounts. Again, follow us at Chatt It Up Sports, shameless plug. And, unfortunately, he wasn't able to hang out with us tonight to share his thoughts. He'll probably share them on Monday. But, man, just getting an opportunity to watch some things on social media and looking at that atmosphere, that looked like one of the coolest Chattanooga sporting events this city has ever seen. In terms of the sheer number of people, over 12,100 people showed up and packed out Finley Stadium. That was pretty epic.
Yeah, and the way the game ended. I mean, it was like a little storybook stuff. You get the 1-1 draw, you had to go to penalties. Dude, it was perfect. It was perfect night. And everybody felt like they were there. Fortunately, I could not go, but I got to watch it. Thanks for all the links. I will say that's one of the best parts about like sporting events like that. It's like, hey, I can post my social now, this link, and you just click on it. And I'm like,
so you watched in its totality on like
I caught it the second half. Yeah.
So what did you think of the broadcast? Talk to me a little bit about that experience.
It was pretty cool. It was on a phone. It was on a phone, relatively silent. We're going through a sleep regression, as they call it. So, it's just on off to the side, but it's cool. Like, it's just nice to have, like, because I wanted to see what it looked like. And it definitely looks cool when it's there because the field where the camera is and stuff. But looking over at the full side, especially from all the social posts and the pictures were awesome. Dude, the home side was wildly packed, and all the stuff Miggy was telling us, like, it's crazy to see that semi-pro or mid-level pro soccer is that popular on a Wednesday night in school year.
Yeah,
crazy. It was awesome though. It was awesome. I was like so pumped to see. And hey, caused a little controversy. Mayor Kelly was talking about, the city's blue. Could be a fun little political double entendre, but it was funny to see because I was like, oh, okay, we got a little bit of talk. But then the Red Bulls showed up, man. They showed up and finished the game.
Yeah, there's some way somehow that we have to make this sort of an annual event. Like, this has to now be a game that plays every single year.
Yeah. Love the name, the Chattanooga Derby.
Yes.
That's perfect. I'm in every year. We want to interview both these coaches now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely have to do that. moving forward. I'd like to get them on just in general after the fact, just to talk about the environment and the atmosphere. And speaking of that, what was the guy's name from Section 109 podcast that we had on? Was it Matt?
Caniglio? Yeah.
Yes, Matt Caniglio. Him and I were DMing back and forth on Twitter, and I was trying to get him on the show tonight just to talk about the experience, and obviously having the CFC background and the soccer background that he does. I want to get his perspective on it. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it work, but I did ask him to share his thoughts with us via message. So I want to just portray those for the audience. He said, and I quote, just asking about the environment and the whole thing in its totality. He said, obviously not advancing in the cup is disappointing, and certainly not getting it done against that particular opponent is especially frustrating. Wouldn't even say his name. I think the Red Wolves name. I thought that was kind of interesting. But I said it for the 2 weeks leading up to this game, and I'll say it again, that very little about American soccer today is actually about results on the field. That's just where the game is in this country right now. Chattanooga showed up and showed out because folks wanted to be a part of something special. The memories evoke the history we all lived and was worth coming back for. Losing on penalties is never easy, but years down the road, an untold number of new CFC fans were created last night, and none of them will be able to tell you who we played. This morning, folks from around the community woke up and continue to fulfill the mission of making Chattanooga a better place through soccer. The small but spirited other side will celebrate, not realizing that they're just one day closer to folding up shop. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo, shots fired.
Wow.
This one will sting for a while, but when you zoom out in the history books, it'll just be a blip on the radar in the story of CFC. End quote.
Dang.
Man,
That boy's got some poetic justice in him.
he sure does, man. That was fantastic. That was honestly the first time I read it.
Oh, really? Okay, so you were. Oh, yeah. You got the little starstruck right away.
I did. I got some chills reading that. Honestly, my full body chills.
Oh.
Boy, it was spitting.
He was.
I love true fandom. I love true fandom, especially to this level. Because if you love CFC, you love CFC, and he does. He
sure
really does.
Yeah, so that was the really cool thing. One really cool thing that happened in our city on Wednesday, and there was a lot going on Wednesday night. I mean, you had CFC versus Red Wolves, obviously was the main event. You had, and I even forgot about this one, Chattanooga State playing the Chattanooga Lookouts at AT&T Field.
Boy, did they really hate scheduling that on that.
God, tough. And same thing for us with softball. Like we had a midweek game against a top 25 mid-major poll team in Jacksonville State. Like it was good sports all the way around in Chattanooga on Wednesday night. So that was really cool night of sports. And obviously the Red Wolves won. I don't know what the score was, the Lookouts Chattanooga State game. And then we ended up winning 3-2, which was great over Jacksonville State twice. We've beaten them. So, pretty impressive that we were able to do that. Dude, we've won 24 out of 26 games. Like not to jinx anything, but
that's solid, dude. That was a rough start.
Quietly on a tear. It's been fun. There's obviously been some struggles. Some of the girls are really going through some adversity right now, but it's been fun. And we've got Western Carolina coming in this weekend. One game on Friday at 6:00, and then we got two on Saturday, 1 and 3:00. There's rain and weather coming in on Sunday, so that's why we moved the game from Sunday to Friday. And Friday is actually Bark in the Park night. So if you got any furry friends that want to come with you to the game, they're free of admission, and you can bring them to the ballpark, which is kind of cool. And the other thing that I wanted to just touch on real quick, because we talked about this many a months ago with our man from the Chattanooga Parks and Rec Department. Chattanooga becomes the first U.S. city to become a national park city. Can we get 3 claps one time? Well, that wasn't
too quiet.
Well,
sorry,
orchestrated, but it was there all the same. It is virtually. It's difficult virtually, but shout out to our city boys. It's just pretty impressive what we've got going on here. And I know a lot of people don't know about Chattanooga and how special it is, but being here, obviously, Chase, you grew up here. Joseph, you're from Georgia. You're close enough. And I've been transplanted here for 4 years. Like, it is a special place. And there's a lot of really cool things going on. And that was just sort of one of them that we had touched on, and we were hoping it was going to happen. And on Thursday, it officially happened, where Chattanooga was named the first United States National Park City. So pretty darn cool.
That's crazy, man. It's awesome though. It's like, it's hard to describe like how good this place is. Me and Bobik and Miggy talked about it, and Joseph on Monday or Tuesday. Sorry, but it's just buy stock in this daggum place. Just buy freaking stock in this.
By the way, that was a great conversation y'all had. I listened to most of it today, and Benny was awesome.
Benny's the man, isn't he? He's just the man. I love that guy. He's all it just was broing out. Just broing out.
Just Lucky Charm lattes and stuff, no big deal.
That's it.
Lucky Charm
Wrestling a little,
lattes and RKOs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just great stuff. Just another local note that I wanted to throw out there for everybody in terms of the sports world here in Chattanooga. And, shout out to our man, Gino D over on Hits 96, did the Sports Minute today and talked a little bit about this on our Sports Minute. But shout out to a couple of Chattanooga wrestlers. Obviously, wrestling is huge in this area as well. Ethan Orchuk of Signal Mountain, his younger brother, Jojo Yurchuk, and then Bradley Central's Dewante McMillan and Christian Heritage's Harrison Murdoch. They all went to Virginia Beach this past weekend and came back with national championships in wrestling. So pretty freaking impressive. 4 national titles coming back from multitude of different local schools. And so that was pretty cool. And then Cleveland Blue Raiders head football coach Chandler Tygart, after a pretty successful 2 years with the program, he will not return. The school decided not to renew his contract. So it's going to be interesting to see who steps into that role next. That's a pretty prominent job. Obviously, you feel kind of like the little brother to Bradley Central, but with all the success that Damon Floyd's had there. But it's a good job, and if you can find a way to find some success there in Cleveland, like, that's a pretty big deal.
Pretty big deal. That it is. Boys, my computer's down. I got to roll.
All right, well, let's wrap it up. Follow us up on social media at Chatt It Up Sports and wherever you get your podcasts as well. Again, at Chatt It Up Sports, sub on YouTube, all the good things. We want to thank Scott Spinelli for jumping on with us. For Joseph Guthrie, our producer, Chase Green in the middleman. And for me, I'm Greg Larnard. Be great to somebody today. It could, impact somebody's life some way, somehow. We love you. Thanks so much for being with us. And we'll talk to you all next week. Peace and love. Have a great weekend.